Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark.
And I'm Midge Munster. So, Penny, one of our favorite things to talk about on this show is those crazy Victorians.
This is true. We love those crazy guys.
I love them. And lately, there have been some bizarre rumors going around the internet about them. And I figured,
Hmm.
what better place to address and unpack that than right here on Ghouls Night In? So
Ooh.
today we're gonna do a little Midge's myth busting episode.
Yeah, I love it.
Midge bust? No.
Midge Busters?
Immediately I was like, wait, nope, nope. uh, we're gonna do
Bustin'
some.
makes me feel good.
Oh, starting out strong. All right. But we're going to do some myth busting today. And we're going to answer the question, did Victorians eat mummies?
Ooh.
Have you seen anything about this going
Oh,
around
I,
online?
I, I am aware of this.
Okay. This like just came into my sphere in the last week or so, and I was like, surely that can't be true. Uh
Surely.
Surely. And we're gonna find out if it is or not. But in order to find the answer to that, we have to go back pre-Victorian era and start in the late 1500s when Europe
Ooh.
discovered ancient Egypt.
Wow.
Whoa! And of course, by discovered, I mean that they happened upon it and then started taking a bunch of shit that wasn't theirs. Yay, colonizing.
Ooh.
So, as Europeans uncovered the history of ancient Egypt and the pyramids, they began translating their language and learning about all of the Egyptians' different practices, including their death practices. And unfortunately, their curiosity also led them to disrupting Egyptian tombs.
Yes.
Yes, which of course showed them mummies. And this was quite a discovery for them at the time because there wasn't much cross culture information going on. There was no internet or anything of the sort, so information could take months just to travel across your own country, let alone cross continental.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Europeans, obviously, like we are, you know, of European culture, we're used to burying our dead in the ground. So tombs and mummies were really fascinating to them. It was a totally new concept. And as they began translating the language and studying the mummies, a word came up that the Europeans thought they knew, which was mummia. And to the Europeans, mummia was a type of bitumen, which is a semi solid petroleum substance,
All right.
now used for things like
Mm.
roofing. It's more or less
Ah,
asphalt. But of course, that means in olden days it was used as what? Medicine.
medicine. They're just like
Exactly.
any weird shit we can eat or smear on ourselves. We love it.
Probably poisonous. Better use it as medicine.
Ooh, great.
And doctors would prescribe bitumen for literally almost anything: headaches, broken bones, nausea, nosebleeds, like you name it, it was bitumen. um, and this was actually a practice handed down from ancient Islamic and Greek medicine, and it would continue to be used throughout the 16th century, making mummia a common cure-all for over 500 years. It was
Wow.
basically Tylenol or like ibuprofen. Like, just take some bitumen and call me in the morning. But unfortunately, what the Europeans did not know is that mumia in the Egyptian language referred to a different substance that was used to coat mummies during the mummification process. Now,
Okay.
it did resemble bitumen. It was very like waxy and dark, so
Hmm.
the confusion was understandable.
Yeah.
And these two terms basically got lost in translation with each other. And the Europeans were like, oh, heck yeah, we hit the mother lode of medicine on these dead bodies.
Ah.
We're going to be so rich. Um, but Penny, how do you get a substance off of a dried up corpse?
Yeah, that would be a conundrum
It
to
is,
face.
isn't
I
it?
can't say that I've ever wanted to get a substance off a dried up corpse.
Right. Well, and the answer is you don't. It's
Yeah.
part of the mummy. And so what did the Europeans do? They decided to take the mummies from their tombs and use the entire body for medicinal
Yep,
purposes.
they sure
And
did.
they sure did. And so mummy powder becomes the hot new medicine trend.
Ugh.
Yeah. So what mummy powder is, they basically would grind up the entire mummy, bones, flesh, muscle, all the ligaments and goodies all up in there, grind it all up into a powder, and then ingest it by either putting that powder on food or usually in a drink in wine. Sometimes they would add like it to cocoa or add a little like cinnamon to it to try to get rid of the, the body taste.
Ugh.
This reminds me so much. Did you ever watch My Strange Addiction?
I'm familiar. I've watched bits and pieces. It gives me a little bit too much like cringe
The
for me to
ick,
fully watch
sure.
it. It grosses me out.
Yeah. There was a woman on there that was addicted to eating her husband's ashes, and she would, like,
Uh,
carry his little urn around, like, pixie sticking it with her finger, and that's all I can picture when I was reading about this. I was like, "Hey, the My Strange Addiction woman was onto something."
she was onto something. Is there, I don't know if this will come up, but is there any like description of the time of what it tasted like?
I didn't find that there was, but I did find that it said that people we'll we'll get a little more into this, but
All right.
basically that it didn't really do anything, and obviously,
Yeah.
and that the noted side effects were only bad breath and stomach aches. So it didn't smell or taste good, I would assume, if it was
Yeah.
causing, like, halitosis. I would think it would just be kind of like, well, they weren't burned, though. I was gonna say kinda ashy, but they weren't burnt,
Yeah, they were just
so
kind of like old and dusty.
yeah. Formaldehyde? I don't
Yeah.
Um,
Whatever Egyptian mummy
yeah,
was
very
like.
very salty, probably.
Yeah.
So this, obviously, as we're indicating here, might seem really gross and upsetting to us, but this is far from the first time that we see this type of medicine in cultures. You also like, I thought about this while I was writing this. You may remember, when we did the Mary Shelley episode, we talked about there was a doctor who was famous for this idea that a mixture of blood and bone could bring back the dead, like a bone
Mhm.
powder and blood.
Yeah.
Um, and you have to remember, like, this is a time when very little is still known about anatomy and the body and
Yeah.
how it functioned. We're still at a phase where we're drilling holes in skulls for people with epilepsy. We're leeching people. It's not a science by any means at this point. And a lot of illnesses were still being attributed to almost supernatural causes in some way, like maladies of the spirit. And
Yeah.
so medicine practices matched those beliefs. And this idea that the body could cure the body was really quite common. So, like, yeah, like I said, this doctor that Mary Shelley apparently had heard about believed this. Um, Another person who strongly believed in this type of medicine was the king.
Hey.
Yeah.
A real trendsetter.
A real trendsetter, King Charles II, and his doctor, a French chemist named Nicolas de Fer. They were kind of known for using bone remedies for the king.
Mm.
Specifically, the king was prone to headaches, and so Nicolas would grind up human skull, it was said, to use as a fancy precursor to acetaminophen.
Sure.
So when mummy powder showed up on the scene, the king was all about it, of course. He was like, hell yeah. And as was the times, then everyone else was like, heck yeah, the king's doing it. We should all do
Right?
that too.
Yeah, if the king's doing it, it must be good.
Yeah, he seems like a guy who knows what's up. So, much like the idea that the skull powder could fix a head problem, it
Mhm.
was believed that the type of mummy that you consumed would make a difference in the kind of health benefits you would receive from it. So, you're looking for a mummy to grind up to make your bread. They were looking for young, healthy bodies, preferably ones that had died quick and violent deaths, like soldiers,
Ah,
so that the corpse was in otherwise good health when they
okay.
passed.
I was about to say when you're like young, healthy bodies, I'm like, not a lot of those are corpses in general, but I guess yeah, if it's a violent death.
Yeah, so they were hoping to find, which is kind of miserable to say, they were
Yeah,
hoping to
yeah.
find people who died quickly and violently. Um, for royals such as Charles II and other social elite, eating mummies was also deemed as like appropriate for them because doctors claimed that mumia was made from pharaohs. And so
Oh.
the idea was that this medicine sustained their royalty.
Oh, sure.
Sure, you know. And if you, what's really kind of, I mean, I was gonna say what's wild about this. Everything about this is positively
Literally
wild.
everything.
First of all, let's start there. Um, but when you think about mummies today, they seem pretty rare. You know,
Yeah.
we only see them really in a few museums across the world. Like it's not like we're rolling in mummies or Egyptian artifacts in general, for that matter. However, it's estimated that around 70 million mummies were made in Egypt over the 3,000 years of
Yeah.
their civilization.
This is why. This is why they're rare. Is people were
It's
grinding them up.
unfortunately, this is why. I
Yeah.
mean, not just this, it's
No,
just,
no, of course not, but
general mishandling of artifacts, taking things that don't belong to your culture. But yes, crazy trends like mummy powder are a huge part of the reason that so many of this history is now just lost to the sands of time, or well, or more
Hmm.
aptly to the belly of the bourgeoisie. I also have to pause here, Penny, because I've got a little fact that came up in this research that I think you're going to be smitten with.
Ooh.
Uh, so, at a certain point, they start to run out of mummy resources.
Our mummy supply is running
Our
low.
money supply has run dry, and we'll explain that here a little bit more in a second. But there are records that indicate that people were looking for ways to replace their mummy supply, and people went looking for bog bodies
Hey, the bog
because
body, return of the
the
bog bodies.
return of the bog bodies, because obviously people believed that that process was similar to
Mhm.
mummification, which they're not
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different for sure, but it's the body is preserved in a similar
Yeah,
way.
similar results.
But so people were eating them up,
Yum,
which
yum.
gives a whole new meaning to bog butter. Uh,
Mm.
0 out of 10. But eventually, uh, people kind of catch on to what's happening here. I mean, it's a phenomenon, right? It's all over,
Yeah.
and so trade bans begin coming forward on human remains, which seems like
Hmm.
that should have been happening already, but pop off. So we get these trade bans. Hey, stop taking mummies out of Egypt. But there are still plenty of people who want mummy powder and no supply. So we look at bog bodies, but there's not that many of those. And as the shortage of mummies becomes apparent that it's like not going to be a thing anymore, um, it becomes evident that doctors and apothecaries were making counterfeit mummy powder with
Mm.
modern corpses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there were even like recipes out in the world that were a guide on how to, quote, make your own mummy and
Ew.
grind it into powder. And that, then, of course, it's a, what's the word, domino effect? Uh,
Yeah.
because then this leads to like grave robbing and also like it's cannibalism.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
talking
It's
about
not good. It's not good.
cannibalism. And I think while I don't believe in this point of view, I think it's easy for people to separate themselves from bodies A that died a long time ago and B bodies that are not of a culture that is their culture.
Yeah.
But then we're continuing into a space where now we're eating people who are alive right now,
Yeah.
and people still kind of seem unbothered.
Yeah.
I just have a lot of
I
questions. Like, I'm not excusing, obviously the mummy powder thing is horrible, but I kind of, I guess I can kind of get there mentally of like people separating themselves from that being
yeah.
human. Anyway, wild. But thankfully, most folks had lost a taste for mummy medicine by the end of the 16th century.
Phew.
So, but it did, it did unfortunately. I mean, it continued for quite some time,
Yeah.
even after the end of the 16th century. The last mention of mummy medicine being used is in a German pharmaceutical journal from 1905.
Oh, no.
So it wasn't happening on that large scale that it was in that, little moment in the 1600s, but man, 1905, that's not that long ago.
1905. No.
It's not that long ago. Did you ever watch The Office?
Yes.
Do you remember the episode where they go to Gabe's apartment to watch Glee and he has those like Japanese seahorse like bits ground up and they're supposed to like give you virility? Do you remember that?
Oh, vaguely, yeah.
I was telling Taylor about this episode while I was writing it and he's like, "It's like the seahorses." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "From The Office." I was like, "Oh my god, I forgot about that."
People do like to grind stuff up and
They
be like, "This'll work," and it's
do.
like, I don't think it works that way."
I know, it's bizarre. But yeah, gross. That's all I have to say
Gross.
about that. But
Title of this episode is just gross.
gross. That's gross. But yeah, as I said, on the large end of the scale, by the end of the 16th century, the consumption of mummies had pretty much stopped. So then this begs the question, why is the internet attributing this idea to the Victorians? Because
Hmm,
that's not the Victorian era.
it's not.
Well, that last little mention of it, 1905, technically hits the Victorian era, but that's not when it really happened. Um, so yes, mummy powder in the medicinal sense may have fallen out of fashion Victorian era.
Well, pre-Queen Victoria.
Right. But the fascination and exploitation of Egyptian culture certainly did not fall out of
Oh,
fashion.
no.
And in 1799, just on the cusp of going towards Victorian time, we get Napoleon invading Egypt to block British trade routes. And this leads to a very important historical moment, which is finding the Rosetta Stone.
Hey.
And that was kind of the precipice for a huge period of like Egypt craziness. Like,
Yeah.
literally, this period is called Egyptomania. It's like Hulkamania,
Hulkamania.
but
The
Egypt.
original Hulkamania.
uh, so people are can't get enough of Egypt. And yes, the Victorians may not have been eating mummies, but they were not too far behind that. It's not surprising at all to me that the Victorians, who we know had a rich death culture themselves,
Mhm.
were also obsessed with Egypt's culture and their death practices. However, the ways in which they chose to show this fascination are odd at best and massively disrespectful at worst. Much like our good old friend arsenic, they thought what a great use for mummies it would be if we made paint.
Yep. Mummy
Yeah.
Brown.
Yes, that's right. Mummy brown was a very popular pigment used in paint during this time, which was just as you would guess. Say it with me: crushed up
Up. Mummy.
mummies. uh, this just seems so unnecessary. Like,
Right? Like, and also it's like you did all this to make brown?
brown!
Like,
There's
I
a million
understand when
ways
you're
to make
like
brown paint. It's not like it produced some extraordinary color never seen by the human eye.
right, and, like, it's one thing to be like, "Oh, like, we have a hard time making bright colors, but this arsenic sure does make a pretty green." That's like, "Okay." But, like,
Right.
you can make brown out of anything.
Literally throw some dirt in water, boom, brown.
Brown.
Like, yeah, this just in particular to me was flat out wild. Um, and yeah, Mummy Brown was super popular. I guess it was supposedly really good for doing shadows on skin and faces and things in paintings, and stayed really popular for a long time. And in fact, you can still find in paint packs browns named Mummy Brown. They're not made with mummies
Yeah.
anymore, but the color name stuck, which I thought is interesting.
Not with real mummies.
Now with 100% less mummy.
Oh, like when like when your tuna can is just like 100% dolphin free.
Yeah.
It's 100% mummy free.
No mummies were harmed in the making of this paint. But this is not even the most unnerving thing that the Victorians were doing. The big thing that came to pass during their time was mummy unwrapping parties.
Woo!
These became a common event in private homes where Egyptian mummies would be, you guessed it, unwrapped for the entertainment of the guests. Now, in the beginning, early unwrapping events had at least like a veneer of respectability in a medical
Yeah, like
sense. Like they were
research.
right. They were like, it's for science, wink, wink. So in 1834, a surgeon by the name of Thomas Pettigrew kind of became one of the first real like Egyptologists. Like he was very renowned for his knowledge of Egypt
Mhm.
stuff. And he unwrapped a mummy at the Royal College of Surgeons. And autopsies and operations, it was pretty common for there to be like operating theaters and things
Yeah.
at this point. So um this unwrapping was just like another public medical event, and people came and watched and were like, whoa, cool, a mummy body, that's neat. But as they often do, rich people soon got wind of this and thought, hey, I could unbox a real mummy just for the thrill of it and because I have money. And then all pretense of medical research was completely lost very shortly. And the extravagant dinner parties began, and people would entertain their friends with unwrapping while reminding everyone how rich they were that they could own an actual mummy in real life.
Okay, this is giving me the question though. So in the previous mummy powder eating phase,
Mhm.
were they unwrapping those or was it like wraps and all?
My understanding is they were unwrapping them.
All right.
It was just the goods.
Good to know.
So that is an excellent segue into our next little bit here, which is just to answer our question: did the Victorians eat mummies? So the short answer is no, they didn't. There isn't really any evidence to support that claim. However, because, as we've learned here today, this was a long respected medical practice, and the Victorians, as people, were certainly fascinated with death, Egyptian culture, and obviously mummies, it may be reasonable to believe that some of them at least tried mummy powder.
Try
Uh,
just a little nibble.
just a little quick dip while pigmenting their paint. Uh, but I would say on a grand scale that we can debunk this rumor that the Victorians were like goblin mummies.
Yeah, that was somebody
That
else.
was somebody else. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but this is one instance where the Victorians weren't quite so crazy. Uh,
Hey.
I mean, they were. They were still doing weird shit with mummies, and they just weren't eating them. You can still buy mummies on the black market, and I am horrified that anyone would want to do that. And while I find the idea of, like any kind of adventurer movie where there's like a mummy's curse, like that, you know, it's culturally insensitive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But also, like, if mummies were cursing people, I get it.
Right,
Stop
yeah, that's
grinding
fair,
us
you
up and
guys.
eating us. Stop doing that. Why are you doing that?
Maybe the real mummy's curse is that it's just not great to eat a ground up person.
The real
And
mummy's
and
curse.
maybe that's gonna upset your tummy.
Yeah, the real mummy's curse is IBS. That's why all Europeans now have IBS.
Yep.
Oh, well, I'm so excited that you knew about. I figured you probably did because this seems like kind of your sweet spot in history. But
I did, but I also had just kind of heard general, like, mummy eating claims, and I didn't
yeah.
know about how much of a gap there was between all of the various mummy
Mhm.
disrespecting practices.
Well, and
So,
I basically this all stemmed from me getting sent a TikTok a couple weeks ago, and somebody was like, "You should talk about this on the podcast. This is crazy that Victorians were eating mummies." And there's no context in a lot of these
yeah.
TikToks and things that are going around. It's like, "Did you know Victorians ate mummies? Look it up." And then that's the whole thing. And so that leaves a picture of people like yellow jacketing, right? Like sitting
Yeah,
around a
mhm.
table and like with
Just
a fork and
peeling
knife
off
just
some mummy
digging into
jerky.
mummy jerky, right? um and so that was where I was like, I need to look in because certainly that can't be what's happening here. um and I don't know that what I found was better or worse,
Right? It's like, it's
but it was
just
different
different.
than what I thought. So now you know,
Now you
that's
know.
how people ingested mummies and painted with them.
Wild.
Well, thank you all for sending me. If you were the person who sent me the original TikTok about this, thanks for the inspiration. This was really fun and I mean, I hesitate to say fun, but this was very interesting to look into, and it was a
Yes.
piece of weird dark history that I was unfamiliar with completely. So I got to learn a lot myself today, and that was really fun. If you are enjoying our podcast and you would like to let us know, or if you have suggestions of other topics that maybe we don't know anything about that you'd like to hear us learn and talk about, give us well, first of all, follow us. But
Yes, please.
you can communicate with us by leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you leave us a rating, that would be wonderful, but reviews are even better. You can leave those on Apple Podcasts, or if you don't listen to us somewhere where reviews are accepted, you can always shoot us a Instagram DM review. Penny, do you have a review for us today?
I do have a review. So this review was DM'd to us by someone who can't review on their app. It
Heck
is
yeah.
from Nicole or Muffin Top Mutter on Instagram. And she says, Ghouls Night In aroused my amygdala. 10 stars. You're gonna love this one, Midge.
I can't wait.
While taking my daily spooky ghoul walk for my mental health, I like to walk down deserted paths around my neighborhood with my AirPods blasting Midge and Penny's soothing voices discussing spooky topics. While laughing and gasping over all the banter, an innocent jogger leisurely jogs up the path behind me. I may have horror movie screamed and also peed a little. Thanks, Midge and Penny. You officially made me pee my pants. 10-star emojis. This, oh my God, Nicole, you delighted me so much when you sent me this. She also then showed me that you can order caskets on Costco Canada's website. The important facts that the ghouls need to know.
So many good things. I'm overwhelmed. That was amazing.
Right. Oh my God. So
Oh,
good. So
well,
good.
that's gonna be the new like descriptor on our podcast. When you open it, it's gonna be like Ghouls Night In. What is this show about? So good it'll make you pee your pants.
Your pants.
Oh, well, thank you for that. If you would like to submit your Instagram review, you can follow us over there at Ghouls Night in Pod. You can also check out the link in our description box over there and check out our merch. I've seen, again, more people buying Ghouls Night in t shirts and sweatshirts. I love, love, love
Hey.
to see that. Also, a reminder that as you are listening to this, Penny and I are getting ready to make our big trip to Midsummer Scream. So,
Woohoo!
if you are also going to be at Midsummer Scream, and I mean, you'll see us coming from a mile away. We're easy to spot.
We are
Uh,
easy to spot.
please don't hesitate to stop us and say hello, grab a picture. We'll give you a sticker. We'd love to talk to you. So say hello. And if you will not be at Midsummer Scream and you'd still like to see our faces, you can find me all across the web at Midge Munster.
And you can find me at Penny Snark.
And until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye.